everyone, welcome to our very first virtual course. We're really excited to launch this today, where we're going to, over the next 16 weeks, I think, no, 12 weeks? Anyway, 8 modules, we're going to learn together about how to build your own data logger, led by our fearless leaders, Freaklabs, Akiba and Jacinta. So just before we get started, housekeeping as always, just so you're aware, please bear in mind this session is being recorded. We will post it to YouTube and WildLabs after the session so that you can access it later. We'll do that throughout the course when we hold office hours. So even if you can't make our office hours events, do make sure you ask your questions either in the forums or emailing us, because we will make sure they get answered in the office hours and you'll be able to check in with the recording afterwards. As always, say hello like everyone is already. Use the chat to say hello, introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining us from and why you're interested in this topic. We're super curious to find out what you want to do with your data logger, because I mean, that's part of what Akiba, Jacinta and I are getting excited about, to see all of the possibilities. So do tell us what you're thinking about. Gonna quieten somebody. Thank you. So yeah, tell us why you're joining the course and what you're excited about. During today's session, please use the chat to ask questions, comments, share links and resources. We also, as usual, have a data logger collaborative notes page, which I will drop into the chat if I can manage my screens. Here you go. So if you have specific questions, hi everyone. Yep, if you have specific questions, drop them in the chat or drop them straight into the data wrapper. Oh my God, we're going to talk about too many sorts of data. The data wrapper notes. When you're asking a question that you'd like Akiba and Jacinta to answer, just make sure you note somewhere in your comment whether you have a microphone or not, because our preference is always to have you ask the question and join the discussion. I can read it out if you don't have a mic prepared but connected, but you know, just tell us either way. And when you're asking a question, just turn your video on. It's nice to see your face, and turn your mic on as well, and we'll get you to ask the question. Because this is the first session of the course, we also thought we just might set some best practice like culture for going through this course together. We just wanted to say, WildLabs and you guys we have a really lovely culture of being supportive and open and collaborative, and we really want to take that into this course as well. We just want to make sure, let's all just remember there's going to be quite a few different levels of experience in this course, and let's just be supportive and patient with each other. And like, if you're more experienced, don't overwhelm the more beginners in the series. Just be supportive and just be conscious of each other and encouraging. Yeah, just thought we'd say that at the start. That's the sort of approach we want to have here, because we're all learning together. We've also set up a community group for you on WildLabs, so you can get in there, meet each other, connect in between the office hours events, and it's where you can post your questions as well, and help each other out. But Akiba, Jacinta and I will also be there to answer your questions as well. And just to reiterate, questions are so welcome, and feedback is welcome, and we're here to learn together and to support you. So throughout the course, if you have questions, post them in the community group. If you don't feel, and we'll answer them there, we'll also pick them up in the live office hours events. Bring them along to the office hours events if you want to talk through stuff, because I can guarantee you, if you have a question, someone else will also have that question. So you're doing everyone a favor by asking it. However, if you don't feel confident, or you just don't feel confident asking it in the public forum on WildLabs, you can just email us as well, and we can bring questions up and cover them. So choose your own adventure. We're just to let you know, there are multiple ways that we're going to support you through this process. I think that's it from me. Really lovely to see you all checking in. I'm going to hand over to Akiba and Jacinta to give the welcome. Let me stop sharing.
Okay.
Oh, hello, Lindy.
Okay, so can everyone see? Can everyone see?
Yes, we can. We're good.
And can everyone still see?
Yes, we're good. Off you go.
Excellent. So as Steph said, this is the Build Your Own Data Logger course that Akiba and I will be taking you through over the next 8 modules. So before we begin, we'll talk a little bit about how the course came about.
Oh, so it was kind of interesting because this was when Steph was putting together the first season of Tech Tutors, and then we were discussing maybe something that Jacinta and I could contribute, and then we were talking about like we were actually developing a data logger to monitor temperature in our compost piles and stuff like that, and I think, and it seemed like kind of an interesting thing to kind of introduce people to, I guess, creating customized devices, because data loggers are useful in so many different ways, but especially in wildlife research, like it's so heavily dependent on data collection. So I think, but what we didn't expect, so we thought that we would do, like, for the Tech Tutors, we do like one kind of episode or one Zoom session on it, or one team session on it, and that would be done. And then, but now that as we mapped it out, then it turned into like this 8-part series of like going from but I mean, but I think that Jacinta and I are trying to be very comprehensive, and the reason why is because that, you know, like wildlife research is kind of in an interesting area where, along with all the domain knowledge, like, you know, like the expertise with the animals, the biology, and the ecology, there's wildlife researchers are also at an interesting cusp where there's a lot of technology being thrown around, but actually wildlife research is one of the few areas that technology can actually be useful. So like one of the women we work with, Meredith Palmer, who runs like networks of camera traps, has to sift through thousands of images and video all the time. And so, like, you know, and that's where, like, say something like AI can start getting useful in order to at least tag interesting videos. So but I think another thing that I kind of noticed is that there was a lot of there's a lot of kind of technology being thrown around to the point where, you know, like, even if you're doing it, like, even if you're doing technology all day, it's still overwhelming. And so I think a lot of people that don't specifically focus on technology are probably a bit overwhelmed at, like, kind of like everything that's being thrown around. And so that's one of the main things about, like, this course, and hopefully, you know, the courses that follow, are to kind of demystify the technology, and also kind of to help people create a filter for what's actually useful to them and what's not useful, because there's so much so many new things that are kind of just happening simultaneously. So I think one of the main I guess successful outcomes would be so that people can have a technology filter. And so like, oh, Raspberry Pi is cool, but I don't really need that, you know, or AI is cool, but only for images. So, oh, and sorry, just one more thing. And the other thing is that wildlife people are extremely demanding of their technology. And when I say that, like, the devices go in very strange places with very interesting requirements. Like, you can't have external wires because monkeys will pull them out, or, you know, or you can't, you know, like, and a hyena ate a device that was deployed in the Serengeti that we, you know, and so, like, we have to think about those kind of things. And so another successful outcome is, because I think a lot of wildlife people already customize their own devices, no matter where you fall on the technology spectrum. And I think hopefully we can create a more structured approach to customizing devices. And I think that's something else that we're looking into.
So building on that, as Akiba mentioned, we're going to be building a custom data logger, but we'll be using the Arduino platform. And being focused specifically on wildlife and environmental researchers and those in conservation, we're also focusing on getting the device deployment ready. We don't assume any prior hardware experience. However, we do assume that you'd be familiar with programming concepts such as variables, conditional statements, functions, and classes, and so on. At the end of the course, the aim is to have you more familiar with how to assemble Arduino-based hardware based on what you need, how to use the libraries or the software that comes with the hardware, how to write an application using the Arduino IDE, and have a better understanding of what's needed for the device to be deployment so that you can have robust, reliable, gathering accurate data for you. If you don't understand any of the terms, don't worry, because we will explain the terms as we go, and we've got resources to help you, cheat sheets and so on. So don't worry about that right now. In this series, though, we're not delving into circuit design. That would be a whole different kind of course, because you can go very deep into hardware depending on how interested you are. So rather what we're focusing on, as I mentioned, is giving you the building blocks that will allow you to customize off-the-shelf hardware and to write. The process that we'll be going through over the next 8 modules is the process that we use here at Freaklabs to develop and deploy our devices. So we'll be covering building the hardware, the proof of concept and prototyping stage, piloting and testing, and then deployment and troubleshooting. We'll be sharing some of the tips that we've discovered the hard way, and also going through, as I mentioned, common terminology that's used in hardware, common concepts, so that even if you want to step back a little bit, you're able to have a conversation with someone who might be able to develop something, a device for you. And as I mentioned, don't worry if you don't understand the terms at the moment, because we have a whole suite of resources to help you. Let me just back up here. So the Arduino platform. Sorry, we'll jump back to the learning and support. So the videos, each module contains short videos from anything from 3 to 8 minutes or so. And the idea is that you can watch them, but you can also watch them at your own pace. You can go back and rewatch them depending on how familiar you are with the concepts. We also have additional resources, so the presentations, some terminology, cheat sheets, and other resources when and as we need them. We do understand that English is not the first language of everyone, so if my Australian accent or Akiba's US accent is difficult to understand, or if we're using words or explaining things in a way that doesn't quite make sense, ask questions. We have forums up, so you'll be able to post questions, post project ideas, troubleshoot your devices there. And as Steph mentioned, we also have the office hours every 2 weeks where we'll have a live Q&A, and also just to sort of share how the progress is going, some things that you wanted to know that maybe we can sort of work into the course as well, and or answer somehow. We do also appreciate that the time zones don't always work for the live office hours, don't always work for everyone. So if you can't make it to the live office hours, send your questions in beforehand, and we'll endeavour to answer them through in the live office hours or via the forums. To start off, and just to get everyone on the same page, when we're talking about the Arduino platform, what are we talking about? There's kind of 3 elements, and the first is Arduino or Arduino compatible hardware, sensors, and other peripherals. Second is, and I guess the best way to think about Arduino is to think of it as a standard for hardware, in the way that you might say have web standards or data format standards such as CSV. If a device is Arduino compatible, it means that the manufacturers of the device, including Arduino, the company itself, have agreed on a common set of standards, and that might be common elements in the microcontroller, a common pin layout, and a few other things. And we'll explain more about that as we go. But it means that you can assemble the Arduino devices with relative confidence that the libraries that go with that hardware will work on whatever configuration you've created. And that's the second part of the platform, is having libraries that access and communicate with the hardware. The third part of the platform is the IDE, and that's the Integrated Development Environment. And this is basically a piece of software that lets you program and download your application onto the hardware. The interesting thing with Arduino is that most Arduino and Arduino compatible devices are designed for proof of concept or prototype, not necessarily for development, for deployment. And so we've added on a few extra modules to take it over the line, if you like, to make sure that you can get the devices actually into the field for a decent amount of time. So the hardware that we're using in this course is the WILDLABS circuit board and kit. And you can see some of the specs that we've got there. It's got 16 KB of RAM, 128 flash. It's also got some added features.
Oh, actually, if I can interject a bit, we've actually, in order to make this device, I guess, more usable, especially in a data logger application, we had to deviate from the standard Arduino microcontroller, and we used one that had more memory resources. And and that's one of the things that Jacinta had mentioned in regards to Arduino as a prototyping or development platform versus as a deployment platform. And so in order to, like, for example, the SD card uses most of the memory resources on a standard Arduino Uno. And so and because we want to have multiple sensors, so we have like a real-time clock, a temperature and humidity sensor, and also a motion sensor, then we would exceed the maximum amount of memory. And then, which is why that we made a lot of design choices on
So one of the things that when we were developing the course was we needed to either design or look for hardware that had some specs that were bumped up, because as Akiba was saying, the common Arduino devices have some limitations, but work depending on your application needs. If we go through a little bit, and again, don't worry too much about the specs, because as we go through the course, we'll explain what they are and how they interact and why they work the way they do and why it's necessary for deployment. The WILDLABS kit also comes with the DHT11 temperature and humidity sensor and PIR motion sensor. It comes with a programming dongle, which you connect to your computer, and then that downloads the code to the hardware device. And it comes with a battery case. It takes 3 AA batteries. Finally, it comes with an enclosure, which is IP65 rated, so it's dustproof and waterproof, as well as cable bands. So you'll be able to modify the enclosure as you need to, depending on where you want to deploy. It also comes with, we've written libraries, and we'll explain a little bit more about the libraries, which are available on GitHub, and also include some of the other hardware libraries that you may need. And finally, the other thing you'll need is the Arduino IDE to program and load custom applications onto the board. We're using the desktop version, not the web version, and this is free to install from the Arduino website. You don't need the WILDLABS kit, but if you want to build with us, then you will need it. Otherwise, there's lots of information in the videos, in the documentation and the sheets as well. So either way, we hope that it's really useful, but it's up to you.
So
sorry, can I just interrupt? So you're saying that people can build along with the WildLogger, but are there alternatives that they can build along with?
No, it would just be watching the videos and gathering information.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the concepts that we go through kind of would apply to Arduino applications, and so like I think that like one possible option also is for people to kind of audit things and just like follow along, and then if it gets to a point where it starts piquing your interest, and then you can decide if you want to pick up a device. And so we tried to make the devices as reasonable as possible, because and also comprehensive, so that it would just be like everything would become included. So
awesome.
And I think with that is that because we go through the whole process and explain a lot of the concepts, that information you can take and apply to any kind of device that you would be looking to deploy. So things like understanding pins and I/O ports and that kind of thing is sort of common hardware concepts in design.
I look forward to understanding what those are by the end of this course.
And that actually brings me to the first module, which we'll be releasing this today or tomorrow, which we're really, really excited about. And what we'll be going through is a lot of the concepts. We'll go through the design, the hardware design stack, a little bit more about the process and explaining for us what's involved in each of those processes. We'll be looking at the physical hardware, what makes it up, explaining common terminology, and we will be looking at the software. We'll be delving into the difference between a CPU, an MCU, and an MPU, as well as some of the power aims that we have, or power kind of consumption levels that we try to achieve with the data loggers or the devices. So that was kind of it from our side, but we really wanted to open it up to everyone else and to have some conversation and ask any questions and that kind of stuff.
All right, so if you have any questions that you'd like Akiba and Jacinta to cover just in this Q&A, please drop them into the chat and I'll call on you. It's really, this is going to be quite like the office hours events. They're going to be really relaxed and just a chance to come and talk to us and just, I assume they're probably going to be a little bit like the after Tech Tutors events that we hold. If anyone's been to them, they're just really, really casual. Christos, also just everyone, if you're dropping a question in the chat, can you just say if you have a microphone or not? Christos, do you have a microphone? Yes, do you want to join in?
Yes, hello. Good morning from Greece. Thank you for the opportunity. My question is when would we need physically to have the data logger, whether we are using some Arduino Uno, let's say, or the one that you are offering. When would we need physically to have it in our hands, and whether there is an option to order it from Europe, to bypass any delays and customs and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
So perhaps I'll answer the first question and then maybe, so the modules, each of the modules will be up on the WildLabs website. So you can go back and do each of the modules when they arrive. The first module is, you don't need the device physically in your hands. We'll go through a lot of the concept stuff. So there's at least 2 weeks if you wanted to start off with module 2 and get into the coding.
I would also say that in module 2, which will be released weeks from now, a lot of that is kind of setting up the software, setting up the development environment. Like all that is done on the PC. And so, I mean, there's some very light stuff done, but you can actually do that on just a standard Arduino also. Or like, actually, you don't really, I think what I'm trying to say is you don't really need the hardware until module 3, which would be about 1 month from now. But because this all exists on YouTube, then you can actually kind of go back to it whenever. So like, I guess the proper answer is the earliest that you would need the hardware would be probably 1 month from now.
Yeah, I've just also for everyone, the main WildLogger page, the course page on Wild Labs has an FAQ down the bottom, so you can run through some key questions. In there was a link to where you can purchase the WildLogger kit, and I've just dropped a link in the chat, so you can purchase it from there. Keeper, I think it takes you a couple of days to use them, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. All right. So so the devices, actually, we didn't expect to have as many people that signed up as that did. So like Jacinta and I were kind of expecting like, maybe like 30 people might sign up. So we prepared, our first batch was like of devices was like 25, and then those kind of got sold out, I think, on the first day. And so like we so we're now, and so we're shipping out in about within, I think, about 2 to 3 days. And so like, and we're starting to catch up. Like we've also ordered other parts too. To get to your question also, we do ship to, like, we can ship to Europe. We can pretty much ship anywhere in the world. Some areas, due to COVID-19, are very difficult to get to, and so so right now there's multiple shipping options that we're trying to do. I think the main thing, like the main priority, is just to get hardware into people's hands. And so like so that's like, so Greece is no problem. If there is if there is an issue, say at customs, and it takes a long time, then let us know. Like the cheapest shipping option, which is airmail, doesn't have tracking. So, but if there is an issue or something like that, and like there's an emergency, then we can also just kind of express out another device to you. So just like.
And as far as avoiding customs issues, we usually have pretty good success in sending devices to Egypt and to other places as well, and they get through. So we don't anticipate that there will be custom issues. It's more because of COVID that things are unpredictable.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Any other questions from everyone who's joined us? I might pull some from the what we had coming in from people registering. My favorite question was, can a biologist really do this? Guys, can a biologist learn how to do this?
Yes, of course.
Sorry.
I think like, actually, I think that like the really nice thing is that most of the people that are doing this course would actually probably understand the technology better because there's so much context. So a lot of people that I think that are taking this course already have kind of a very specific idea of either how they want to use it, or like kind of to learn the skills for the specific application that they'd want to use. Like a lot of people here already know kind of what they want to learn. And I think, as opposed to like a technology person who's just learning things just because it's cool. So I think that's the.
I would also say that a lot of the hardware concepts, once you get to the kind of idea of it, is actually quite straightforward and accessible. What's often a bit difficult sometimes, especially at the beginning, is the terminology. And so I would also say that you may find, especially when you start to think about the process, you're probably already doing the process. So there's a lot of similarities to pull across from some of the field work that you're already doing as far as sort of prototyping and testing. So I think there's a lot of crossover and yeah. And the aim of the course is to make it accessible. So if there's things that are more difficult to understand, then that's something that's really helpful to know for us, because we can kind of look into it and explain it.
Some other people were curious around what sort of things are going to be covered in the course. Like, are you going to be able to, are you going to be covering how to properly protect and like casings and all those sort of things, the data logger?
So, Jacinta, or do you want me to take this one?
It's up to you.
Well, I guess like, so Jacinta and I have like, so that's actually one of the main things that we'll be covering, because like, a lot of people think that, like that technology is just about like the software and the computing, but actually, like especially for wildlife researchers, because everything is like field based, and so you actually need to like one of the main things is to understand the environment, and so there's a lot of different components that are actually very specialty that aren't common knowledge. So like a lot of times we'll be introducing like aviation grade connectors, which are basically stainless steel, waterproof, non-corrosive, that you can put onto your waterproof enclosures in case you need to plug in cables in and out of them. And then yeah, so there's like just a lot of things that like I think people wouldn't typically know. Like there's also a material called ePTFE, which is used for they're used by cell phone manufacturers to waterproof the microphone and speakers on cell phones. And it's a very fine mesh, so you can actually get sound in, but still maintain a waterproof barrier. And so we'll be covering like kind of materials like that too.
And I think one of the things that we're wanting to is actually the lab. We call it sort of the lab environment for developing your hardware and prototyping is kind of relatively straightforward. It's the deployment side that is where you introduce the real world and things just go out the window. So yes, that to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, that is a very big focus of what we want to cover, and also solicit ideas and share some knowledge on that, because we have our experience, but you guys will also have your own experience as well. And so the more we can kind of pull it together, then the better it is for everyone.
Awesome. There are quite a few questions around how adaptable the data log is going to be. There's one question: can it be adapted for audio recording? So species call monitoring. But yeah, how adaptable is it?
Can we can I screen share? Actually, got a couple of just example sensors and stuff that okay. So can you see my screen? Everyone can see?
Yep.
Okay, great. So on the board, actually on the board, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor as well, but you'll see where the temperature and humidity sensor is, the blue thing down the bottom. There's two sensor ports there, and there's another one next to it. And into those ports, you can plug different things in. So we're plugging in a temperature and humidity sensor, but the ports themselves can take different kinds of sensors. So for example, we've got an infrared proximity sensor that can be, these are just examples. There's a few things you'll need to check, and then you'll need to check for libraries and that kind of thing. But the idea is that we're using the temperature and humidity and PIR sensor to show you how to do it, and then you can go off and look at for what sensors, you know what to look for in each of the sensors. You need, you know, how many pins, is it analog or digital, and plug it in and then start building. So, but Akiba, do you want
to? Yeah. So I think that so first of all, so in regards to audio monitoring, so like one of the things that we're kind of tossing around for the either the second or third kind of course, not this one, but in the series, would be.
Sorry, I was laughing that you're thinking that far ahead, but yes, carry on.
Okay. Well, I think so. Like one of them is an Arduino-based MP3 recorder, and so like for playback, for MP3 playback and recording, and so that would be and so that would kind of get into some interesting areas of like bioacoustics. But since it's Arduino based, it's also possible to interface other sensors to specifically target, like maybe start recording when the light drops below a certain level, or if an animal comes within a specific distance, et cetera, et cetera. So
is that sort of what you did with Meredith and the boombox?
Oh yeah, so boombox was a device that we did. It's actually MP3 playback, but we interfaced to the camera trap's motion sensor, and then so whenever that was triggered, we'd play a predator sound and then record the fear response in the animals. And actually, it's interesting because now we're we've come out with a second version, which is the Boombox Disco, which has flashing lights, and we're working with some people to turn it into a non-lethal deterrent for elephants, to drive elephants away from farms in Congo.
Awesome. So Amit had a question and asks, is the data logger meant for static deployment, i.e. fixed to a tree, or can it be used? Can it be carried along for mobile use?
I think that it would be so I guess I'll take this.
Yeah, sorry, I was just stopping my screen sharing.
Oh, okay. I mean, it really depends. I guess like by mobile use, like, because I mean it's going to be battery powered, and so you can kind of carry it along. I don't know if it's small enough to really be like a wildlife tracking type device, but I think one of the things is possibly on like, you know, on a follow-up, you know, or maybe like bonus material later on, we're planning to have like, you know, because since you guys have like if people have the WildLogger device, and then we're hoping to release like a booster pack, which might have like LCD and additional sensors or GPS, et cetera, So, and I think that's something that we can all talk about too, so.
And I think the size, I'm not sure if you can see it, but the size of the board is kind of that size.
Oh.
So
it's a bit bigger than I expected, actually.
So it's probably primarily at the moment static. I don't know whether you'd, unless it's tied somehow to it. But for this size device, this form factor device, you'd be looking at static.
Nando, do you want to jump in?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess the question is would I be able easily after the course to readapt the logger to trigger a camera? For example, in a camera trap, if I put it in a case and then it detects motion or heat, and then it triggers the camera, like to create a camera trap.
I would say yes, and that's also something. Well, I would say first of all, the larger issue is to figure out how to trigger the camera trap. And so if you're going to use an off-the-shelf one, and you know, so you might need to kind of do some soldering or something in order, unless they have an external trigger, you might need to kind of try and interface to one of the signals in order to trigger it. And that's something that we can talk about offline, and you know, just see. It depends on the specific camera trap. But another thing, like, so I guess what I was getting to, sorry, I didn't mean to surprise you on that one, Steph. But one of the things that I think, like, at least I've been thinking about is to try if we can try and recreate the standard tools that wildlife researchers use. And so one would be like an MP3 recorder for bioacoustics, but one would also be a camera trap. And so we're also working with one of the companies that makes the image processors for the Bushnell trophy cam. And so we're looking at that, but hoping to put an Arduino interface on that. But also we're looking at maybe a more direct still image versions that we can put into a course, you know, that wouldn't be capable of doing video, but you can use the Arduino to capture still images, and that would at least kind of start demonstrating the principles of how you could do that.
Perfect, thank you.
And also just on that, that's that process as far as getting into the circuit board of the actual camera trap and finding where it triggers and then adding speakers to it. That process is what we did in Boombox. So you could take the board and do the same thing. It's a bit more complex because you've got to do a little bit more. For this course, what we want to do is let's start with the temperature, humidity. This is the process, and then when you're like, oh, and then you can get into there. But so yes.
It sounds fun. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Okay, but just to say, you didn't surprise me. It just makes me laugh because I know how much work is going into this course, like 3 courses ahead. So look, I just have my eyes on like, let's get through this one, and then we can like, build like a full program of all of these trainings. But yes, Diego, I think you're up next. Do you want to jump in?
Hi, everyone. Can
Hi.
you see me? Hi. Well, I'm glad to be here. Sorry if you have to be patient, as it's a long time since I speak English with somebody, and I will try to do my best. And I've been trying Arduino with lots of things since last year, but all of them are flagged. So my concern is about how much can we optimize the energy use so to let them in the field and take more hours of data, and it's the problem I'm facing now. So it's basically what I want to learn.
Mm.
So the question is if we are covering that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So how much are we going to be covering optimization and dealing with batteries and all of that sort of stuff?
A lot. One of the reasons, and again, this is taking, Arduino is great for prototyping. It's great because you can get in there and see if something works, but when you try and move it into the field, you start hitting some of the limitations of the standard boards. So one of the reasons we're using the WILDLABS circuit board is because it's got some power circuitry on it that optimizes it for longer deployment life. And the second thing is that we go through a bit of a benchmark that we use and a bit of the formula that we use to get an estimation of battery hours. And a lot of it has to do with, for example, how long the device is awake and doing something, and how low power you can get it when it's asleep. And we touch on that in the first module, and the author video in the first module, which will be out very soon.
And we'll also, I think the fourth module is going to be the optimization, and so and that's where we get into the coding of that kind of so on that. But the other thing also is you'll get a feel for like kind of what the rough battery lives are, and so it really depends on like what sensors you're using and how often you have to wake up and run them. So, and also I think one of the things is a limiting factor is the SD card. So the SD card uses quite a bit of power, and so if you need to go like a year in the field on 3 AA batteries, then what you'd want is like maybe to even go into more of a, like, it's called chip memory, like solid state memory, so like a non-SD card based one. And that's something we can talk about too, like so if you have specific questions later on. So
one of the other questions that came up from people registering was what kind of reading writing abilities does this tool require for data collection? Can it be used by semi-literate forest communities? Like, so how flexible is it in terms of in users?
So the course in building it is probably not appropriate for building the actual device. Once the device is built, it's kind of put in the field and then collect data from the SD card when and as you want. So as long as I guess there's documentation or that they're shown, then there's not a lot of it's pretty straightforward, if that makes sense.
So a few questions. I swear, who's the @uos@ac.uk? Is that Andy? Asking, or this person is asking, has anyone in the UK bought the WildLogger kit? Because he's just trying to estimate how this person, I don't know if it's Andy, I might be making that up. They're trying to estimate how long the shipping is going to be. Akiva, you're actually making them and shipping them. Do you know how long the shipping time is going to be? Oh, it's Maxine. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Well, so the shipping cost to the UK is, I think, about $9. They're shipping directly out of Japan. Mm-hmm. The shipping time, I think, is we're not exactly sure yet. I think because it's via airmail, so I think it's going to be about like normal shipping time is about 8 days, but I think that there's a lot of delays due to COVID and restricted travel, so less planes. So right now we're projecting 10 to 12 days. So for UK, like UK is generally like quite like very reliable for the post system. So normally if it's delayed, it'll either be because of planes or customs.
Yeah. Following up, Lisa, yes, people can still register. You can register throughout. Like, this is not because we're doing it at a learn as your learn as you go. So you can register throughout the course, and you can do it 6 months from now as well. All of the content will be available. We'll post it on Wild Labs. We'll post all the PDFs and slides, and the videos will be on YouTube. So you'll be able to access this at any point. So share far and wide. Do go to the registration page, share the link to register so that people get, that just means you'll get the emails that tell you everything's out, but you can just check in at Wild Labs. It's all freely available. So yeah, this is open to everyone and should be a resource that you can use beyond this this 12. Cool, awesome, yeah. There was one other question, hang on. Oh, someone was asking about standards and good practices in conservation sector in terms of the use of technologies. Are you going to be covering standards and data storage, analysis, science, those sort of things as well, or are we just focusing on the building of the hardware and getting the device ready to go and usable? I mean, it's a massive topic, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, so this is mainly, I think we're mainly going to focus on data collection. And so, you know, getting it to the point where you have data on the SD card and figuring out what are your different options to customize that collection. And I think, so after that, the processing, there's probably a lot of people that are much more qualified than at least I am to like talk about that.
And the data is being saved to the SD card. So as far as data collection, it's an SD card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll also add in that we're in final prep for season 2 of Tech Tutors. So, and some of the things yeah, I know. Together. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we will be covering that side of things in 1 or 2 of the episodes. So we're picking it up, and it's something that we're picking up as well. So there'll be other resources. I think trying to keep the boundaries around this course and what is really important, because it just creates like, look, this could be cool.
And actually, that's a really good point, because I think the this is the starting point. We're trying to build a starting point for people to be able to then launch off. And also, I think that places like the forums are really good places to discuss those sorts of things and to discuss sort of even troubleshooting tips that you might find with this device or other devices as well.
Hey, Paul, do you have a microphone?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, a question about SD cards. SD cards, I'm sure the technical people will understand that they have a limited life cycle with regards to how many times they can be written to. So in my particular area of interest, which is recording microchip numbers, sometimes those cards can run out really, really quickly. So I'm looking for an alternative to save the data temporarily to EEPROM and then only periodically save chunks of data to the SD card. Will you be discussing those sort of methods?
Well, so okay, that's a topic called wear leveling, and it's because if you constantly write to an SD card, then eventually it'll lose its ability to hold the data. But normally they're rated in like, I think, the millions of writes. So like, and for us, that's going to be a lot. So we're not going to cover kind of writing to EEPROM. We're just going to be writing directly to the SD card. Where that becomes a problem is like in things like the Raspberry Pi, because when you turn it on, it'll write a lot to the log files, and so it'll constantly be writing to it, and so you actually do hit that million plus writing time mark, and then the SD cards kind of go bad. So but since we're controlling very carefully how we write to the SD card, so it'll just be like, you know, like, because you'll be physically telling the SD card, take this data, take the sensor data, write it to the SD card. And so, you know, so it'll be more, you know, like even like maybe 10 or 15 writes to the same location would be kind of like, you know, might not even happen. So
I think the another option, Paul, if you're exploring things, would be to look for a wireless module that might be able to transmit the data instead of writing it to the SD card.
The only trouble with that is we live in Wales, which is quite rural, and we're very lucky to have mobile phone signal in much of the area. So items such, you know, using maybe SMS techniques or LoRaWAN is out of the question. And I asked this question because I've come across this myself in during lockdown. I built my own RFID reader, which is Arduino based.
Nice.
And that capacity can reach, you know, you can write to that card quite a lot. I've had an experience in the last month when we had 1,800 writes in a week to the data card with animals being monitored at a feeder, and the SD cards start getting a little bit temperamental after that. And those are good quality SD cards. So then I'm looking at other ways that I might potentially make the writing process a little bit more reliable and less often, obviously.
I wonder if this is a side question, because this exact question came up from someone else in registration, a guy called Keith. So I wonder if this is a thread that we start in the forums to pick up this discussion, and because it sounds like another project I'm aware of as well. So this is why it's a wonderful thing to do this as part of the Wild Labs community, because it's just all of these side questions that come up, we'll have an avenue to pick them up and continue them, and they're totally welcome as well. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So we can talk about it on the forum. So and then there's also a lot of different possibilities for like solid state memories like EEPROM too. So let's discuss on the forum.
There's some questions around the reliability and the trustworthiness of what we're building, and like people wanting to be able to trust their sensors. Are we going to be building trustworthy devices? I assume this probably ties into the modules that are around testing and prototyping, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the trustworthiness of the sensors comes from the quality of the sensor itself. So what we typically try and do is get a baseline in the lab so we can actually test it and then trial it and then take it out into the field. But I think that that's one of the things that we'll be looking at.
Sorry, keep it going.
I mean, so, and also like another thing that we'll probably be discussing, because I think we've got a question on like kind of another question before about like, can we build scientific grade equipment? And I think that like a lot of that, like instead of saying like say scientific grade or how trustworthy is it, I think and this is what we'll discuss, is to put it in terms of like a quantified, like I want to measure temperature to within plus or minus 0.1 degrees Celsius. And I think that's where then we can start kind of evaluating, like, so the sensor that we're using is plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius, and then I want plus or minus 0.5. And then we can kind of discuss from there. And I think I mean trustworthiness or scientific grade is fine, but I think that it's better to quantify that, and then we can get like a more definitive answer.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, guys, we're coming up to the hour. Are there any last questions before we wrap up? I think we're clear. Any last thoughts from you guys before we wrap up?
No, we're just really excited.
Yeah.
And also, actually, I would sorry, just to quickly finish. I'm also really, really curious and interested to see how people are using them and what sort of works really well for their particular environment and research needs, because I think that's really fun.
It's just even seeing people log in here and say, so just tell us where they're joining from and what they're thinking about doing. It is so interesting, like the diversity. I think we're going to learn so much from each other. It's really exciting. Sorry, Akiva. Yeah, I interrupted.
Oh no, it's fine. No, I think that's really exciting because I think Jacinta and I so we're standardizing on, say, the Arduino platform, and then from that, then we can actually start building a base that we can build on. And I think that once we start getting into kind of more the intermediate projects, then I think we're going to get some really interesting things. So it's really, for me, it's really exciting. Like, I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time.
And so maybe one way to view it is, this is a starting place. This is where you can go to check in on what the terminology, what the concepts are, what the processes are, and then from there start exploring.
Akiva, I remember like 2 years ago you sort of floated this idea. I'm so excited that we're at this point. I can't believe it. And I know my whole team's going to be building along and learning as well. So we're excited as everyone else, to be learning from you guys. So thank you so much for, I don't know, coming together and like putting so much energy into this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I look forward to it.
So, also, I think it's also not just me and Jacinta teaching. I think eventually we're hoping to kind of form a self-supporting community that, that has kind of shared knowledge. I think that would be really an ideal case.
I think, yeah, everyone having that base knowledge, in that language, is just in itself going to be super valuable. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. It's just lovely to see all of your excitement that matches ours. So we will be sending you out the first module later today or early tomorrow. So your email will have all of the information you need. But like I said, we'll be posting it all. We'll be posting it all on WildLabs and FreeClouds and YouTube, so it'll be accessible. If you run into any troubles, go to the forums or email us. We're all here. We're here to help. And we can't wait to get started. So thanks for joining. We'll see you all soon.
And Jacinta and I are still tweaking our kind of speaking styles. So, and you might want to forgive some of the jokes, just as a was it foreshadow?
And also too, I think because people will be at different levels and so on, really, if there's things that you wanted to include that were missing or something, let us know, because I think that's again where we can put it into the forums. We can create a thread. It's also a conversation starter for where people are at as well.
Awesome. Someone just put their hand up. Do you want to join in? No, was that an accident? Might have been an accident. No one uses the hands up. Okay, yeah, just to reiterate that. Okay, look, the jokes are welcome ahead of time. I think
wait till you hear them.
Yeah, just to reiterate, in the forums, we're going to have a terminology dictionary thread. So if there is stuff that's being said that we are just assuming that you know, please write it in, and we'll make sure we build out a dictionary so that we can have that as a resource going forward. Yeah, we'll start a thread. So this is super interactive. Yeah, we'll see you in the forums and in the course very soon. All right, bye everyone.
Thanks guys. See you later. Bye.